You judge a guy at the wide receiver position by if he can gain separation versus man coverage. And Quez Watkins really should be shouted out more for what he's doing. What's up, Cerebral NFL fans? Happy Wednesday, December 29th, 2021 morning to you. This is Steve Hyder, and I greatly appreciate you guys tuning in for your daily allotment of Cerebral NFL coverage. Let's get into it, guys. Let's get into that cerebral brain food, if you will. Today's topic, I want to talk about Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver Quez Watkins. In particular, what I really want to dive down into today, guys, is a really simple topic, but I think it's being understated how well Quez is performing. Quez is simply winning versus man coverage. And I'm sorry, there's only one thing that matters when you're trying to evaluate the potential ceiling of a player at the wide receiver position. Can you beat man coverage? The answer with Quez Watkins this season so far, it's been a resounding yes, he can. It's going understated, guys. I don't know why there's not parades in the city of Philadelphia for this guy on a weekly basis, because he's been that good for us. This is a 6th-round pick. If this was a 1st-round pick, we would love this type of production we're getting this season from this young man. He's developing right before our very eyes, and I think it's going unnoticed. It's going untalked about in the city of Philadelphia for the most part. Just really amongst us and the kind of the fan base, there's a lot of buzz, there's a lot of hype. I don't think his production is being taken serious enough. And I know when you look at man coverage, there's all kinds of, intricacies to kind of like what's going on with man coverage, and like, who you're playing in the man system matters, who you're lining up against. What your like who the cornerback is, what position depth that you're playing against, whether it's the second corner or the third corner. Quez is coming out of the slot. Like, I'm taking that into consideration, guys. That's what I'm getting around to, is that, sure, Quez is in the slot, and the slot sometimes can be a team's 3rd best corner. True, but you beat the competition that's in front of you, and Quez is winning against the competition that is in front of him. Simply put, guys, he's got 20 graded snaps on PFF versus man coverage. He's got a 77 grade versus man coverage. Let me put that in the context of who he's outperforming, by the way. Here's a list of guys that right now have a lower grade against man coverage compared to Quez Watkins. Michael Pittman Jr. out in Indianapolis. Not saying Michael Pittman Jr. hasn't done a great job and doesn't deserve his own respect. He's graded lower than Quez Watkins right now in man coverage. Kadarius Toney with the Giants. He's graded lower. Donovan Peoples-Jones with Cleveland. He's graded lower. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Detroit Lions. He's graded lower. Elijah Moore, New York Jets. He's graded lower than Quez Watkins. KJ Hamler, graded lower than Quez Watkins. Darnell Mooney of the Chicago Bears, graded lower than Quez Watkins. Chase Claypool, Pittsburgh, graded lower versus man coverage than Quez Watkins. Brandon Ayuk, San Francisco 49ers, graded lower than Quez Watkins in man coverage. Josh Palmer, Los Angeles Chargers, graded lower. De'Ami Brown, Washington football team, graded lower than Quez Watkins versus man coverage. Jerry Jeudy, Denver Broncos, graded lower versus man coverage. Terrence Marshall Jr., Carolina Panthers, graded lower than Quez Watkins versus man coverage. Laviska Shenault, Jacksonville Jaguars, graded lower than Quez Watkins. Rondale Moore, Arizona Cardinals, graded lower than Quez Watkins versus man coverage. Of course, Denzel Mims, New York Jets, graded lower. And then, I hate to say it, guys, but we got to add in the 2 Eagles. Jalen Reagor, graded lower. Devontae Smith, graded lower than Quez Watkins versus man coverage. I want to add a caveat here. Van Jefferson as well for the Los Angeles Rams. This is like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. This is 19 different players I named. If you notice the theme of who I'm naming here, these are guys that were drafted in the past 2 draft classes, which was all said to be very, very highly rated draft classes coming in, right? 2020 and 2021's draft classes at the wide receiver position. People missed on Quez Watkins. That's the honest to God truth. They missed on him. And this young man is balling out. 77 grade. And I know that doesn't mean he's better than some of these guys. I'm not claiming he's a better route runner than Jerry Jeudy, right? I mean, that's crazy. he's not a better route runner than Devontae Smith. He's probably nowhere near as good a player yet as a Michael Pittman Jr. There's nuance to this conversation. But what I'm saying is, you judge a guy at the wide receiver position by if he can gain separation in first man coverage. And Quez Watkins really should be shouted out more for what he's doing. And this is my attempt here to do that for this young man, is to let people know this kid deserves so much more attention than he's receiving right now. Let me lay it out. The only receivers in this draft class we're talking about, 2020 and 2021, who this season are performing higher than him. Justin Jefferson at Minnesota, Gabriel Davis in Buffalo, and those are two top 10 guys in terms of the whole National Football League first man coverage. Henry Ruggs III, out of football now, can kind of almost scratch that one out. Brian Edwards, another guy that I think teams missed in the draft. I mean, Brian Edwards, it's a shame he suffered an injury because I believe he was coming out of South Carolina and he had a pretty severe leg injury. I was pretty big on Brian Edwards as a guy I would have liked to seen the Eagles take a chance on as an split end boundary side receiver back in 2020. But a lot of teams were turned off with the injury with him. CeeDee Lamb, Dallas. Jalen Waddle, Miami. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Dez Fitzpatrick. I will say Dez Fitzpatrick's a little complicated because he's only got a couple of routes really logged in there. He's not up close to 20 routes like some of these other guys are. Some of these guys are far above 20 graded targets, I should say. When I say routes, it's really targets that they're grading. So this kid deserves so much more credit than what he's been given. And it's sad that we have to go to PFF to get people to realize how well this young man's playing. Because I'm not a huge fan of PFF. But it's an unbiased look at what's going on here, right? These are not Eagle fans grading the young man. He's graded 33rd amongst all wide receivers, first man coverage. It's a 6th-round pick balling out there. He's graded higher than Devontae Smith. And like I said, complexity, guys. Devontae Smith is far better at separating. Devontae Smith is taking shots at teams' best, corners, and they're also, even in zone coverage, guys, they're mixing their coverages on them and they're bracketing them. With that said, Quez has turned out to be quite a good pick by Howie Roseman in the scouting department. One of their finest hours, next, Jordan Mailata probably being their finest hour. But Quez Watkins was a heck of a pick by this front office and this organization. And just to lay it out how these guys graded overall, I'll lay out everybody on the team for you guys. Quez Watkins graded out as a 77, so I'm going to do receivers first. Devontae Smith, 72.4. He was ranked like 53rd, so we have two guys kind of hovering in the top 50 versus man coverage. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, we're only talking about one target, guys, was the third-rated receiver at 63.3. But to be fair, Greg Ward Jr. only has 2 targets versus man coverage, and he had a 54.9. And then Jalen Reagor rounds out at 53.4. Laid out Quez Watkins, 20 targets versus man coverage. Devontae Smith, 21 targets versus man coverage. Jalen Reagor, 19 targets versus man coverage. So they're all pretty similar on how many targets they've received versus that type of coverage. Quez is at the top. Devontae is just behind him, obviously playing teams better corners. And where are you at, Jalen Reagor? I was high on Jalen Reagor. You guys know I was a Reagor guy. I wanted Reagor in Philadelphia because I thought he fit Doug Peterson's scheme. I wouldn't have taken him over Justin Jefferson. I made 2 videos trying to rally people around the idea that Justin Jefferson's a really good football player. Jalen Reagor's got to start beating man coverage, guys. I mean, that could be the kind of the subsection of what we're talking about today. Jalen Reagor at 53.4 with 19 targets it's not acceptable. His release off the line of scrimmage is downright frustrating. It needs to be improved, or you're going to have to move him back, and he's going to have to earn his way back into snaps again, because you're going to have to go get a veteran, another guy that can separate with Quez and Devontae. And then, I'm sorry, but Jalen's going to have to fight his way back. You're not going to cut him because he's a first-round pick, but he's going to have to fight his way back on to the field. It's just not enough right now, guys. I'm going to be honest, and I'm a Reagor guy. It's not good enough. I didn't stop there, though, guys. I gave you everybody. So I added in everybody. Dallas Goedert is our highest-rated receiver overall between tight ends, running backs, and wide receivers. He has an 82.3 grading versus man coverage. That's on 19 targets. The second highest graded guy on our team is actually Kenneth Gainwell at 81.5. That's on 5 targets versus man coverage. Then Quez at 77 versus 20 targets. From there, you have Boston Scott, 2 targets, 75.2. From Boston Scott, you go to Devontae Smith, 72.4, 21 targets. Ooh, from Boston Scott, you go to Miles Sanders on 6 targets, 64.7. Miles Sanders, it's a shame what happened to Miles because Miles is actually having quietly a good year. It's kind of, it's complicated. It stinks that what happened occurred, but it did happen. So it stinks, but it is what it is, right? I mean, we know that the injuries are always been a concern with him. The next guy up will be JJ, 63.3 on 1 target, but he's the next highest graded receiver on this team. From there, we have Jack Stahl on 2 targets, 55 grading. Greg Ward Jr. would follow him, 54.9 on 2 targets. And then not last, but probably least because of the amount of targets, Jalen Reagor, 53.4 on 19 targets. And then last, but probably not least because it's not fair, Jordan Howard's not a receiving back, but Jordan Howard's our lowest graded guy versus man coverage. 53.2, but that's not against any targets. I guess they're just grading routes he's run on air, basically. So when you look at it, you got Dallas Goedert is our best separator versus man coverage. Then Kenneth Gainwell. From those two, you go to Quez Watkins. From Quez Watkins to Boston Scott. From Boston Scott to Devontae Smith. Talking about the gradings, guys. And then you can kind of lay it out how you want to past that point. But those are your top 5 separators. Here's the thing. It doesn't shock me that a guy like Dallas Goedert is our highest rated guy versus man coverage. And I still think Dallas Goedert has leaps and bounds to go versus man coverage, if I'm being quite honest, guys, because he's beating linebackers. He's beating some safeties. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's not quite as impressive. But with that said, he's top 20. He's ranked 20th in the entire football. And when you filter by everybody, he's the 20th highest graded guy versus man coverage in terms of his grade. That 82.3 ranks 20th. Give the guy his due. I mean, he's got to, if he starts beating corners, we got something really, really good in Dallas Goedert. He's got to stop dropping the football. And that's my next point. Hang on. Past that, Kenneth Gainwell is just a really good route runner. We knew this about Kenneth Gainwell coming in from college. This guy was exceptional at running routes. Still holds true. With Kenneth Gainwell. He's an incredible route runner. Past Kenneth Gainwell, then you get into Quez, and you get into like the Devontae Smiths and Boston Scotts. Devontae Smith, he's taking on teams' best corners. I think he's had a really productive season. He's definitely going to probably get really close to that 900-yard receiving mark. He's had a great, rookie year, and Quez Watkins is developing, guys. We should really be proud to an extent of what we got here from the young offensive perspective here. Let me get into the drops real quick before I start getting in the comments, guys, and I'll get into your comments, all right? Let me make my points. Drops, Dallas Goedert, 5 drops on the season. He leads the team in drops. I will say this, man. Dallas Goedert's got to clean up these drops because if this is Jalen Reagor out there dropping the ball the way he's been dropping it the last few weeks, and Jalen has dropped a couple here and there, Jalen Reagor, we'd be chopping him up. Dallas has got to fix it up, man, because he's been getting off because he makes big plays. You know what I'm saying? Kenneth Gainwell is next in line with 4 drops. Then Jalen Reagor with 3, Devontae Smith with 3. Then Jordan Howard, Greg Ward, Boston Scott, Miles Sanders, Quez Watkins all have 1 drop, and that's it. So you add it up, it's 9. Goes to 12, goes to 15, 16, 18, 19, 20 drops on the season. 20 drops on the season is what they have recorded. The highest drop rate, it's unfair, is Jordan Howard. He's only got 3 targets, 1 drop. It's a 33% drop rate. It's misleading, guys. It's a little misleading. You know what I mean? The next highest drop rate you're going to have here is going to be Greg Ward with his 1 drop, 20%. He's only got 7 targets on the season, so that's kind of skewing it a little bit. Past that, we got a 12.1 marker from Kenneth Gainwell on 39 targets. Kenneth Gainwell needs to clean up the drops. That is a problem with him. When you got 39 targets and you got 12% drop rate, that's hot. That's not good. Past that, guys, you have Boston Scott, 11 targets, 10% drop rate. It is what it is with Boston. You know what I mean? And then you got Dallas Goedert, 9.1% drop rate on 65 targets. Jalen Reagor, 8.8% drop rate on 51 targets. And then you got the really good here. I want to shout out some of the good here. Devontae Smith is under a 5% drop rate, 4.9%. Got 91 targets, guys. That's respectable. It's really good. Then you look at, Miles Sanders, 32 targets, 3.7% drop rate. That's pretty good. And then Quez Watkins, just to round out the point I'm making about Quez Watkins today, guys, 2.7% drop rate on 50 targets, Quez Watkins. He's the highest graded wide receiver we have versus man coverage. And he's got the lowest drop rate amongst all these guys. What's not to love, man? What's not to love about Quez Watkins right now? This young man has developed and deserves a lot of respect here.